That's it.
Travel to.
That's it. Yeah, photo.
Oh, yeah, travel to. Mensu.
That's it.
Hey. Oh, Mensu.
Watching this video to the end will open your eyes to the harsh reality that we all need to learn how to love. This story is about Simon, a little boy whose life touched me deeply in ways I never expected. I was once working with some white men in a small village called Aduomi. One day, one of the men approached me and said he'd noticed a child somewhere in the village. His words still echo in my mind.
Come.
If we don't take care, this boy might lose his life. He asked me to find the child so that he could be taken care of. And though I wasn't sure what I was stepping into, I felt a responsibility to follow up. I went looking for this boy. When I finally found him in the house I was directed to, I saw a small, fragile child who barely seemed alive. His name was Simon, just like the man had said. His frail body told the whole story. Simon was suffering from severe malnutrition, commonly known as kwashiorkor.
I'm so glad to say
after we know we okay never be foul that be feel no the most in Tuesdays now wa ba na cook
No la ga ga hunu nyo esi o na ma ahisi
yo
kanu ko ya on tranda
me ko dia ya de ba ne ko do na mse me ba e so be so na yasa
Mama Juma to Musadia.
Oh, no, Papa dia say ya na wa.
Oh, so some kan o de bia de.
That's not that idea. So na ka do le ba. Na ko ya doctor.
Oh, say ka kla.
Ko doctor na ka no wa, mi se ka no ba.
O so ko doctor. Then somebody can what.
No no ku su kan ya san me fi ase ko cheja no.
Dia kan na what you read.
Oh, ka sa eh.
On was on Tiapo.
Okay.
So the moon be. Number me be account.
Dia family so no ya dia. Dia family so no ya dia. Say kra ya ni nyawi.
Then see potin.
Oh we no.
You.
Friday, Monday, Tuesday, I just started 2 weeks and try hospital quite. Oh, I've been, they try. It's a baby, 1 week weapon as I started. It's a quite by still, a giant, Oma, Asonaba. Now, you're doing it. 2 days, a man drop on still.
Also, once I know it was almost on Yamuja, once a wife.
You come with woman, Madam.
And other illnesses that had plagued his young life. His tiny body looked like it had given up on him. His eyes were sunken, his hair brittle and thin, his skin dull and cracked. His siblings too showed signs of the same illness, and as I looked around, it was painfully clear that this family was suffering beyond what I had imagined. Simon's mother, who was also visibly sick, barely had the strength to tend to her children. After seeing Simon, I expected to hear from the white man who had prompted this journey. Days passed, then weeks, and yet no word from him. He had asked me to find Simon, promising to help, but now it felt like he had forgotten about the boy altogether. I sat in quiet despair, realizing that if I didn't step in, this child would not survive. How could someone offer hope and then abandon it so easily? How could this little boy's life seem so insignificant to someone who had once promised to help? I decided I couldn't wait any longer. I spoke with Simon's parents, and they agreed that I could take care of him. They were helpless and had no choice but to trust me, a stranger, to save their child's life. They explained how they often struggled to provide even one meal a day for the family. The father, Mr. Afam, and the mother, Madam Afia Caesar, looked at me with hope in their eyes, as if I was the only person who could offer their son a chance at life. They knew Simon had to leave the village if there was any hope of him recovering. So I called a pediatrician to the village, hoping for some miracle. The doctor confirmed my fears. Simon was gravely ill. He needed immediate medical attention, and he couldn't stay in the village, where poverty and the lack of proper nutrition would only drag him further down. The pediatrician, who wore a violet dress, told me that Simon needed to be moved to a place where he could be properly treated. It wasn't just Simon. His mother was in desperate need of help too. But for now, we had to focus on saving the little boy. I knew what had to be done, but the thought of taking Simon away from his parents weighed heavily on my heart. He was only 3 or 4 years old, and the idea of separating him from his family at such a tender age felt unbearably cruel. Yet it was the only option if we wanted him to live. His parents, though heartbroken, agreed. They knew they couldn't take care of him and had no choice but to let me take him. They saw this as Simon's only chance at survival. His tears tore through my heart. It was as if he knew that something was being taken from him, his family, his sense of safety, his whole world. He cried so much that he eventually wore himself out and fell asleep. I placed him gently in the back seat, trying to reassure myself that this was the right thing to do, but I couldn't shake the feeling of sadness and guilt. No child should have to be taken away from their parents, especially not like this, because of poverty, because of circumstances beyond their control. As we drove to Koforidua, I thought about Simon's future. I was filled with hope, yet the sadness lingered. How had it come to this? A child forced to leave his home, his family, his childhood behind, just to have a chance at survival. I prayed silently that Simon's life would turn around, that he would grow strong and healthy. I couldn't bear the thought of failing him. When we arrived in Koforidua, I took him to the house where he would stay with me. I believed with all my heart that this new place would bring life back into his little body. Without wasting any time, I rushed him to the hospital so that his treatment could begin. The journey we started that day was difficult, but I knew it was one I had to see through. I had high hopes for Simon, but at the same time, the weight of responsibility rested on my shoulders. The white man who had first spoken about Simon had vanished from the picture, and now it was just me and this little boy. I realized that if Simon ever went back to the life he had come from, he would likely not survive. That was the most heartbreaking part, knowing that no matter what, Simon could never go back to the life he once knew. The day I took Simon from his home was the saddest moment of all, but I know in my heart that I did what I had to do. And I pray no parent has to experience such heartache, and no child has to endure such suffering. Poverty and hardship had taken away this family's ability to care for their child, but I had faith that love and perseverance could save him. When we finally reached Koforidua, I took a deep breath and prepared for the journey ahead. I believe this place will change Simon, make him healthy, and give him a future he could never have imagined. I hope that this story touches your heart and reminds you of the power of love. If you are moved by Simon's story, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Together, let us remember to always let love lead in all that we do. Thank you. My name is Asonaba Owusu Aduomi.
Dee.